The ancient stones of Vatican City seemed to absorb the tension. A palpable sense of solemnity mixed with an undercurrent of apprehension had descended upon the world's smallest state. Whispers echoed through the hallowed halls of the Apostolic Palace, normally alive with the measured cadence of ecclesiastical governance. The Swiss Guard, stoic in their Renaissance-era uniforms, stood their posts with an even greater air of vigilance. Something significant was unfolding, something that promised to test the very foundations of an institution accustomed to navigating centuries of change. The air itself felt heavy with anticipation. This pervasive unease stemmed from an impending announcement. Pope Leo XIV, elected only months prior in a conclave that observers described as surprisingly swift, was poised to issue a series of directives. These were not mere administrative adjustments. Rumors, swirling for weeks, suggested a comprehensive reform package. The new pontiff, known before his election for a keen intellect and a desire for efficiency, had apparently wasted no time. He intended to make his mark and to do so decisively. The full scope of his plans remained shrouded in carefully guarded secrecy, yet enough had trickled out to set the Roman Curia on edge. The Church, a global institution of over 1.4 billion faithful, held its collective breath. The formal announcement, when it came, was delivered with characteristic Vatican solemnity, yet its contents sent shockwaves far beyond St. Peter's Square. Pope Leo XIV, in a detailed apostolic exhortation, outlined a sweeping series of reforms. These mandates were aimed, in the Pope's own words, at realigning the Church with the pressing realities of the modern world. The directives touched upon liturgical practices, the role of laity, interfaith dialogue, and most controversially, a re-evaluation of certain pastoral approaches to social issues. The Pope argued that for the Church to remain a relevant moral voice, it must engage more directly and compassionately with contemporary challenges and values. Declining church attendance in some traditionally Catholic strongholds, particularly in the West, and the increasing disconnect felt by younger generations were undoubtedly factors. The Pope's document spoke of building bridges, not walls, and of a church that walks with its people sharing their joys and sorrows. He emphasized the need for greater transparency and accountability within church structures. The language was carefully chosen, yet the implications were undeniably profound, signaling a pontificate ready to steer the bark of Peter into uncharted waters. This was, by any measure, a bold agenda, one that would inevitably provoke a wide spectrum of reactions from a diverse global flock. Among the College of Cardinals, one figure stood out for his immediate and profound disquiet: Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. Known affectionately in many parts of the world as Chito, Cardinal Tagle, former Archbishop of Manila and head of the Vatican's evangelization office since 2019, had built a global reputation. He was seen as a pastor with a deep connection to the grassroots, renowned for his work with the poor, his engagement with youth, and his efforts as a bridge builder. His gentle demeanor and compassionate homilies had endeared him to millions. His voice carried significant moral weight, particularly in the global South. Cardinal Tagle's background shaped his perspective. Hailing from the Philippines, a nation with a vibrant and deeply rooted Catholic faith, he understood the Church's power to inspire and to serve the marginalized. His ministry had always emphasized a direct, personal encounter with Christ, and a Church that was, above all, a mother and a shepherd. While not overtly a traditionalist firebrand, his theology was rooted in a profound respect for established Church teaching and a cautious approach to radical change. The new directives from Pope Leo XIV clearly troubled him deeply. The internal discussions grew more intense. Then came the moment that sent tremors through the Vatican's ancient foundations. Cardinal Tagle, after what sources described as days of prayer and profound discernment, formally communicated his inability to implement certain key aspects of Pope Leo XIV's new directives within his dicastery. It was not a public denunciation, not yet, but it was an act of profound dissent, almost unprecedented for a cardinal of his stature and influence, especially one heading such a significant Vatican department. The news, though initially contained, quickly began to seep through the Curia's porous walls. The refusal was couched in terms of deep respect for the papal office, yet it was unequivocal in its substance. Cardinal Tagle reportedly articulated his concerns with clarity and sorrow, emphasizing that his conscience, formed by years of pastoral experience and theological reflection, prevented him from endorsing changes he believed could be detrimental to the spiritual well-being of the faithful. The act was not one of rebellion, he insisted, but of fidelity. The immediate impact within Rome was one of stunned disbelief. The Roman Curia, while no stranger to internal debates and differing opinions, operates on a principle of hierarchical obedience and unity, particularly in the public sphere. The refusal by Cardinal Tagle did more than just cause a stir. It exposed deep fault lines running through the Roman Curia. What had previously been hushed disagreements in private meetings now threatened to erupt into a more open and damaging conflict. Loyalties began to be tested, and long-standing alliances were strained. Some curial officials, particularly those who had long advocated for a more traditionalist interpretation of church doctrine, privately expressed admiration for Tagle's courage. They saw him as a defender of orthodoxy against a tide of what they considered dangerous innovation. Conversely, a significant faction within the Vatican, many of whom had welcomed Pope Leo XIV's reformist agenda with enthusiasm, viewed Cardinal Tagle's opposition with dismay and frustration. They believed the new directives were essential for the Church's future vitality and its ability to connect with a rapidly changing world. To them, Tagle's stance risked derailing a crucial opportunity for renewal. The internal crisis was no longer brewing, it had arrived. The corridors of power within the Vatican became arenas of quiet, intense lobbying. Different groups sought to influence Pope Leo XIV's response. As news of Pope Leo XIV's directives and Cardinal Tagle's subsequent opposition began to spread beyond the Vatican walls, it ignited a firestorm of reactions across the global Catholic Church. The 1.4 billion faithful, spread across diverse cultures and contexts, responded with a mixture of enthusiasm, confusion, anger, and staunch support, often reflecting pre-existing theological and ideological leanings. The divisions seen within the Curia were mirrored, and in some cases amplified among the laity and clergy worldwide. In many parts of the Western world, particularly in Europe and North America, progressive Catholic groups and theologians hailed Pope Leo XIV's mandates as a long overdue step towards a more compassionate and relevant church. They saw the reforms as an answer to their calls for greater inclusivity, a more modern understanding of social issues, and a move away from what they perceived as rigid dogmatism. For these Catholics, Cardinal Tagle's resistance was a disappointing and concerning development, a sign that conservative forces were attempting to halt progress. They rallied in support of the Pope, urging him to stand firm. At the heart of the escalating turmoil lay a fundamental tension that has characterized much of church history: the delicate, often fraught relationship between tradition and adaptation. Pope Leo XIV's directives, aimed at aligning the Church with modern values, inevitably brought this tension to the fore. His supporters argued that the Church has always adapted its pastoral approaches and even its understanding of certain teachings over centuries, guided by the Holy Spirit. They pointed to historical precedents where the Church had engaged with new philosophical and cultural paradigms, enriching its own self-understanding in the process. For those aligned with Cardinal Tagle's concerns, however, the issue was not adaptation itself, but the perceived nature and speed of the proposed changes. They emphasized the concept of a deposit of faith, a core set of doctrines and moral teachings believed to be divinely revealed and therefore immutable. From this perspective, certain modern values are not merely different but are in direct conflict with these foundational truths. They feared that an uncritical embrace of modernity could lead the Church astray, sacrificing its unique prophetic voice for the sake of worldly acceptance. Tradition for them was not a dead letter but a living stream, safeguarding essential truths. The debates touched upon the very understanding of what tradition means. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle's decision to resist Pope Leo XIV's directives immediately cast him into differing roles depending on the observer's perspective. For a substantial number of Catholics globally, particularly those who felt alienated by what they saw as a drift from traditional teachings, Cardinal Tagle became an instant hero. He was viewed as a courageous shepherd standing firm against a tide of potentially harmful changes, a beacon of conscience upholding the integrity of the faith. His actions were interpreted as a necessary and principled stand, a brave defense of orthodoxy in a time of confusion. These supporters saw in Tagle a figure willing to risk his position and reputation for the sake of what he believed to be true. They highlighted his pastoral heart, arguing that his concerns stemmed from a genuine love for the Church and a desire to protect the faithful from doctrinal ambiguity. In their narrative, he was not a rebel but a loyal son of the Church, sounding a critical alarm. His deep roots in the global South, where faith often intertwines with a strong adherence to tradition, further solidified his image as a representative of a vibrant, yet often overlooked segment of Catholicism. The standoff between Pope Leo XIV and Cardinal Tagle and the wider divisions it exposed has brought the Catholic Church to a significant crossroads. The immediate future appears fraught with uncertainty. How Pope Leo XIV chooses to navigate this internal dissent will be critical. A heavy-handed approach could further alienate a significant portion of the faithful and clergy, potentially deepening the rifts. Conversely, a willingness to engage in genuine dialogue, even with those who fundamentally disagree with his vision, might offer a path towards reconciliation, though consensus on all points seems unlikely. The implications for the Church's global mission are profound. A church perceived as deeply divided internally may struggle to present a coherent and compelling message to the world. The energy consumed by internal disputes could detract from its pastoral work, its charitable activities, and its efforts in evangelization, a field particularly close to Cardinal Tagle's heart. The current crisis also raises questions about the process of reform itself. How can the Church adapt to changing times while maintaining unity and fidelity to its core identity? This is the challenge that now confronts the entire institution, from the Vatican to the smallest parish. Please subscribe to our channel History Documentary Hub for more insightful videos and intriguing content.